Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, it's that time of the week again. That's right. We got to head back out to the state of Illinois and follow up on That's right. It's our weekly time to take a look at the data that's being published by the Illinois State Police Department to determine just how compliant or lack thereof Illinois residents want to be with their new firearms registration requirements. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, but you think you might have a firearm that needs to be registered, I do recommend you check out some of the other videos that we're going to link up down below. This is our opportunity where we go through the numbers each week. We take an objective look, and then we take kind of a speculative look to try to see what the compliance rate might actually be in the state of Illinois. So today, let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about the gun law that nobody is complying with. Okay, Illinois, it is that time of the week again. We're going to go through the numbers off the Illinois State Police Department to see if any of you are choosing to comply with this new firearms registration requirement. Now, for those of you who've geeked out before, you know that there's 2,415,481 FOID card holders in the state of Illinois. Now, I recognize that probably not all 2.4 million of them have an item that needs to be registered. But remember, if you own one of those scary semi-automatic rifles, now labeled as an assault weapon, or you own any magazine which exceeds more than 10 rounds, these have to be registered no later than December 31st. Now, as of the recording of this video, November 29th, there is 4,089 individuals who have disclosed at least one item to the Illinois State Police. So if every FOID card holder had at least one item to register, then with 2.4 million individuals and only 4,089 actually having registered something, the current compliance rate under that equation is 0.17%. And we have seen when we first started looking at numbers, it was 0.10, then it was 0.12, then it was 0.14, and now we've seen a 0.17 increase. So we are seeing a relatively steady but minimal increase to these numbers. Then let's take a look at how many items per person is actually being registered. As I mentioned earlier, there was 4,089 individuals in the state of Illinois who have now registered at least one item. There's a total of 11,924 items which have actually been disclosed to Illinois State Police, and they break down as 7,842 firearms, 4,010 accessories, and 72 ammunition disclosures. So, if you just take a look at the number of items that were disclosed and the number of people who disclosed them, what we're now averaging is 2.92 items per individual. And that also has remained relatively consistent. We've seen 2.96, 2.94, 2.93, 2.92. The numbers have all relatively been in the same way. Now, if that were to remain consistent, that is all 2.4 million FOID card holders in the state of Illinois has 2.92 items, which they should be registering with the state of Illinois, then the total number of items which would have to be registered would be 7,053,205. However, there is only currently 11,924 items registered, which again equates to a 0.17 compliance rate. Now, Governor Pritzker has been asked by members of the media about compliance, and he is getting really testy. And in fact, he was recently quoted as saying, "I hate that mainstream media are picking up right-wing media talking points, so let me correct you a little bit. Yeah, there are 2.4 million FOID card holders in the state of Illinois, but 2.4 million people do not have assault weapons. So when you talk about the percentage of people who are filing and registering, it's much higher percentage than what you've cited." And I agree with the governor that the likelihood that all 2.4 million FOID card holders own an assault weapon is incredibly remote, and I'm sure the number is far less than that. However, let us remember that any one of these firearm owners who owns any one magazine which exceeds more than 10 rounds would have an item to register. And if they own anything in the 50 caliber format, that would need to be registered as well. So Governor, it's a lot more than just assault weapons. And I know a lot of gun owners who have very small collections that haven't even really gotten into long guns, only handguns, that have multiple magazines that exceed more than 10 rounds. So I was about to sit down today and do some more number crunching when I got an email from one of our loyal viewers, Richard M. from Illinois. Richard, this is for you. Thank you very much. Richard is obviously much more mathematically talented than I am, although that's not saying much. I'm not particularly mathematically talented. But this is how he broke down the numbers. And I think this is a really, really good way of looking at it. And Governor, you are going to be happy to know that when I get to the end of this equation, you're going to see that, hey, you know, your compliance rate, you're right, your compliance rate is far better. Now, we start with this premise, okay? There's multiple studies out there that say that approximately 6% of all Americans own a semi-automatic rifle, or what the state of Illinois now calls an assault weapon, okay? That's 6% of all Americans. Now, if that number remained consistent throughout all the states, for the sake of this argument, there is approximately 12.67 million residents of Illinois. However, only about 9.9 million of them actually are of legal age to own a firearm. So let's go ahead and exclude all of those that are too young to own a firearm out of that. If there was a 6% ownership rate across all adults in the state of Illinois, that means there would be 594,432 assault weapons which are owned in the state of Illinois that need to be registered by the end of the year. Now, knowing that we have 7,842 firearms which are currently registered, here's the good news, Governor, here's the really good news, then yeah, your compliance rate here is actually 1.3%. And that's wonderful because we've actually moved the decimal point now, right, Governor? So instead of 0.10%, 0.12%, 0.14%, 0.17%, which have been the numbers in all of our previous videos, yes, Governor, it is possible that your compliance rate is all the way up to 1.3%. Now listen, I get that a lot of you have no intention of registering your firearm whatsoever, and that is certainly your prerogative. We have always said here at Washington Gun Law, we're not going to tell you how to think. We're just going to give you all the stuff to think about. Remember, these firearms do need to be registered no later than midnight on December 31st of this year. Now, I know we have talked about if these firearms are not registered, could the state of Illinois actually go around and confiscate them? And that is a very, very loaded question. But as far as accumulating some of the data necessary to begin rounding up these weapons, let me point to you from an article I found at Moms at Arms. We'll link it up down below. Fantastic group that does a lot of significant work in the Second Amendment community, and actually were the ones that originally called out the two justices in the Illinois State Supreme Court that had taken illegal campaign contributions from Governor Pritzker. Of course, they were later found not to be illegal, even though they more than doubled the campaign limits, but I digress. Now, they have pointed out that the background checks that are currently being conducted by Illinois State Police and the data that Illinois State Police is asking all FFLs to record when they're selling ammunition now includes the caliber of the ammunition that's being sold. So remember, there are certainly some calibers of ammunition, 5.56, 223, 300 blackout. Those types of calibers are very, very common amongst this particular platform of firearm. So understand that if you've done any ammunition purchases in the state of Illinois or are planning to do any ammunition purchases in the state of Illinois, you may be providing the state of Illinois with yet more data to connect the dots to you and your scary assault weapon. So yeah, the bottom line, Governor, is your compliance rate right now with this absolutely atrocious and unconstitutional law is somewhere between 0.17% and 1.3%. Listen, we'll keep you updated when we get new numbers. We'll do another video. It is very obvious right now that nobody in the state of Illinois has any intention of following this law. Listen, if you got any other questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington Gun Law by now. If you don't, that's okay. That information is right down there in the description box. In the meantime, let's everyone remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching. Stay safe.